Many of us will be familiar with the story of William the Conqueror and his decisive victory at the Battle of Hastings in 1066, where he defeated King Harold Godwinson and claimed the English throne for himself. And in this epic conquest, William would go on to establish Norman rule across England through a series of brutal campaigns, most notably the devastating Harrowing of the North between 1069 to 1070. And this is the general set of events that most mainstream audiences are familiar with when it comes to the Norman conquest. But there also exists a fascinating and largely forgotten legend that suggests William's success in conquering England was not simply achieved through military might and political cunning, but through a supernatural act of desecration that broke an ancient Viking spell protecting England from invasion. And this tale involves the exhumation and destruction of the remains of Ivar the Boneless, one of the most feared Viking leaders of the 9th century, whose body was supposedly buried in a protective mound that magically guarded the English coast. And in this exploration, we will delve into the medieval saga sources such as the tale of Ragnar's sons and the story of Heimingar to better understand this remarkable legend and examine its historical foundations and validity. But before we begin, don't forget, if you want to find out more about the deaths of some of history's greatest figures, then subscribe to my channel, Historical Exit. Our most detailed depiction of William's alleged destruction of Ivar's tomb comes to us from medieval Icelandic saga literature, particularly the tale of Ragnar's sons, which was composed centuries after the events described within the text. And according to this saga, Ivar the Boneless had made a prophetic request before his death around 873 AD, asking to be buried in a coastal mound that would protect England from future invasions through supernatural means. The saga vividly describes how this protection functioned for nearly 2 centuries until William's arrival, and according to the tale of Ragnar's sons, the protective spell held true until when Wilhelm Bastard came ashore. He went and broke Ivar's mound and saw that Ivar's body had not decayed. Then Wilhelm had a large pyre made upon which Ivar's body was burned. Thereupon, Wilhelm proceeded with the landing invasion and achieved the victory. A similar account appears in Heiming's pattern, which provides an equally dramatic description of William's actions. This source states that when William the Bastard came to the land, he went to the place and opened Ivar's mound and saw Ivar undecayed. Then he had a great fire made and had Ivar burned in the flames. After that, he fought battles across the country and won the victory. These accounts suggest that William's conquest succeeded where previous invasions had failed, precisely because he understood and neutralized the supernatural defenses that had protected England since Ivar's burial. However, it is important to highlight here that the story of William destroying Ivar's tomb finds no support whatsoever in contemporary 11th century sources. The extensive chronicles of the Norman conquest, including the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, the works of William of Poitiers, and the detailed accounts of Orderic Vitalis, make no mention of any tomb desecration or supernatural intervention preventing William from conquering England. And these contemporary sources thoroughly document William's northern campaigns during the Harrying of the North, describing in vivid detail the systematic destruction of crops, livestock and settlements, the mass killing of civilians, and the scorched earth tactics that affected potentially 150,000 people. So, if these contemporary sources did not attempt to hide the most brutalist and cruelest of William's tactics, then it is reasonable to assume that if William had indeed destroyed the tomb of Ivar the Boneless before attempting to invade England, one of these contemporary historical sources would have made a note of it. So then, how exactly did this legend of William destroying Ivar's tomb come to be? Well, this narrative first appears to have emerged from the complex cultural intersection of post-conquest England, where Norman, Anglo-Saxon and Scandinavian traditions merged in the medieval imagination. These saga accounts represent what scholars call imaginative memory, communities creating meaningful narratives about the past to address present concerns rather than preserving actual historical events. The legend served multiple important functions in later medieval culture. It provided a supernatural explanation for William's remarkable success where other invasions had failed, suggesting that his victory was not merely due to superior tactics or fortunate timing, but because he possessed the wisdom to understand and neutralize mystical defenses as well. And the story also reinforced Norman legitimacy by portraying William as someone who could master both military and supernatural challenges to claim his rightful throne, making this legend of William destroying Ivar's tomb very politically beneficial for the Normans. However though, aside from no contemporary sources making reference to this legendary event, the archaeological evidence does not support such a theory either, as there is significant interest amongst the archaeological community in identifying the possible location of Ivar the Boneless's actual burial site, with the most promising candidate being the remarkable Viking mass grave discovered at Repton in Derbyshire, where excavations have revealed the remains of nearly 300 members of the Great Heathen Army from their winter camp of 873 to 874 AD. And among these remains was discovered a body of exceptional height, described in 1686 as a humane body 9 foot long, in which some scholars tentatively associate with Ivar himself, possibly explaining his boneless epithet through a skeletal condition requiring exceptional height and leg braces. However, the most important aspect to this discussion is the fact that radiocarbon dating conducted in 2018 confirmed that all the burials in Repton date to the 9th century Viking period, with no evidence of later medieval disturbances being identified that might support the saga claims about William destroying Ivar's grave. And if Repton really is the final resting place of Ivar the Boneless, then this presents another significant problem for historians seeking to verify this legend, as the Icelandic sagas consistently locate Ivar's protective mound being on England's coast, supposedly positioned to guard against seaborne invasions. But Repton is deep inland at Derbyshire, far away from any coast, further clarifying the implausibility of this narrative. So, based on all the textual, archaeological, and geographical evidence we have available to us, it would be safe to presume that the story of William the Conqueror destroying Ivar the Boneless's tomb appears to be purely a product of later medieval literary imagination, and not based on any actual historical events that occurred in any way or form, with this popular tale emerging from 12th to the 13th century Icelandic culture that retrospectively interpreted the Norman conquest through supernatural frameworks familiar to aristocratic audiences across northwestern Europe. Therefore, we can conclude that this legend ultimately tells us more about how medieval people understood supernatural power, political legitimacy, and cultural memory than it does about any actual events occurring during the year 1066. So I hope you found this video on the legend of William the Conqueror destroying Ivar's tomb to be fascinating and interesting. And if you did enjoy this video, please do like and share this video with others. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to my channel, Historical Exits, so you can find out more about the deaths of some of history's greatest figures. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day. Bye.